Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our second panel discussion. We are now entering the Food Security Seminar. And in this particular panel discussion, we are discussing the ocean economy. Please don't forget to hashtag SUSWeek 2022. That is hashtag SUSWeek 2022. And also feel free to visit our virtual 3D exhibition and engage with our exhibitors that are online. Remember, you do stand a great chance to win. Thank you. We are receiving your comments. We are receiving your questions. Please feel free to add them also into this discussion. Joining me this morning to have quite a poignant conversation around the ocean economy across the globe and across Africa, we have Associate Professor for University of Ghana, Professor Kwasi Addo. We also have Ms. Zaidi Efren, who's an Island Innovation Ambassador for Blue Economy Research at the Blue Innovation Institute. We have the Deputy Director for One Ocean Hub, Dr. Bernadette Snow. We also have the Managing Director for Fish Forever at Rare, Ms. Rocky Torona. We also have the Vice Chair for SAP FIA, which I'm looking forward to hear what the abbreviation for that is, Ms. Shamira Daniels. Welcome to all of you. Let me hand over to our Professor Addo just to do the introductions. Over to you, sir.
All right, thank you very much, and hello to the panel members. My name is Kwasi Addo. I'm a professor in coastal processes in the University of Ghana, and also the director for the Institute for Environment and Sanitation Studies. My research areas focus more on coastal processes, looking at coastal erosion and coastal dynamics, and how the nearshore processes affect the issues within the coastal environment. So thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prof. Can we have Zaidi?
Hi, welcome everybody to this session. I'm Zaidi. A lot of work that I do in islands recently has heavily focused on the blue economy sectors, in particular small-scale fisheries and fishing industries, commercial fisheries, workforce, and tourism sector, all of which depends heavily on coral reef ecosystems and coastal communities. A little bit background considering fish and fisheries agreements and small-scale fisheries. I have worked as an officer in charge in fisheries with governments for a while. Looking forward today to bring you some policy and operational discussions to really see how we meet the challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zaidi. Truly looking forward to that. Dr. Snow?
Good morning to everyone. I'm speaking to you from Scotland today, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this esteemed panel. As already mentioned, I'm the Deputy Director for the One Ocean Hub, which is a large UKRI-funded program at the University of Strathclyde. I'm also adjunct professor at Nelson Mandela University at the Institute for Coastal and Marine Research. And my research is focused around social and ecological systems, so looking at it from a systems perspective and food security from that point of view. We were asked to also just give a little bit of a positioning and maybe be a little bit think of things like one sees mariculture or aquaculture as a panacea to solve all ills, or that we should have infrastructure development without thinking about the other aspects and components within the system. And I think we need to look at food production in light of securing livelihoods as well, but also to take a systems view and also to ensure that coastal communities are not impacted negatively. There's future thinking, in other words, taking climate change, ecosystem services into account, and also to make sure that there is an inclusive approach with other users, and also, the environmental protection components that are needed to secure livelihoods and to secure food into the future. And if we don't take this broader lens and connect policies, and connect different development initiatives in this way, I fear we will not be securing livelihoods into the future, because we will destroy the very livelihoods that exist today.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Snow, and welcome from Scotland indeed. Thank you. Rocky?
Hi, hello everyone. Very nice to be here. Thank you for having me. So my name is Rocky Sanchez-Tirana. I work with the RARE, which is a nonprofit that focuses on behavior-centered solutions to environmental challenges. I run a program called Fish Forever, which is focused on coastal fisheries. In today's discussion, I'm really here because I wanted to bring the perspective of small-scale fisheries and the coastal communities that depend on them. It's a portion of the ocean that doesn't always get counted when we talk about economy, because the data isn't very clean. But in truth, the contributions of this band of ocean are outsized, right? A large portion of the world's small-scale fisheries come from coastal waters. We're talking about 0 to 12 nautical miles from shore. It's just 6% of the ocean, but it's actually home to 70% of marine biodiversity. And, over 113 million people depend on small-scale fisheries for employment or subsistence. Many of them are women, and they produce 40% of the global fish catch, almost all of which goes to human consumption. So this is, in terms of the impact, on food security, on jobs, livelihoods, and the fact that coastal communities are among the most climate vulnerable people on the planet, I think we cannot ignore how we're managing these coastal waters. And
100%. Looking forward to engaging further on how can we better manage them indeed. Thank you very much. Over to you, Ms. Daniels.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Shamira Daniels. So SAPFIA stands for the South African Pelagic Fishery Industry Association.
Okay.
So we a recognized industrial body that represents the small pelagic fishery, which is your anchovy and your pilchards. So your canned fish on your shelf, that is the products, that is the outcome from our side, and then fish meal as well, which is, I think, fundamental to food security. Our organization represents about 70 to 80% of the commercial right holders in South Africa. I myself am a SMME right holder. I'm the MD of a majority Black-owned, women-run fishing company. And I think there's a much-needed voice for that in our industry, and it's a big fight for us to be involved in a meaningful manner. As a side note, I know we're not talking about that today, but I think it's always important to just always have it on the agenda. I think for me, the importance of food security right now is vital. It's on the back of us having an engagement with government around oil and gas and seismic surveys in the ocean. And when the issue of food security came up, we said, it was almost a catchphrase of you can't eat oil. And the response was, but you need oil for everything. And my response to that is, well, it's good and well I have diesel in my vessel, but if there's no fish to catch anymore, what's the point of having diesel in my vessel? What's the point of having gas for your stove if there's no food to put on the stove? And that's a broader, a more important conversation that we have to have on an ongoing basis. That food is a fundamental need and a right of people. And jobs and the economy is important, but if there's no food, people can have all the money in the world, but if there's no food, it means absolutely nothing. So that's my start to the conversation.
100%. An important angle that you've added there, the participation of women and the participation of Black women essentially in that space. So it is relevant and it is critical. So I've noted that down. Perhaps let's go back to you, Professor. You spoke about, your department also looks into coastal erosion. What has been happening? Because we've also noted that aquaculture has been contaminated. Our oceans are no longer healthy, and a lot of the powers that be or multinational corporations that are responsible for this coastal erosion are not being accountable. So perhaps you can add a bit more commentary around that.
All right, thank you very much. I think I also try and link it to food security.
Sure.
You realize that if you don't have a healthy coastal environment, you cannot be assured of a secured, environment or a secured future where we have abundance of food. So having a healthy environment means that we have environment that is being able to ensure that the ecosystems are thriving and ecosystems are providing what they need to provide. Now, coastal erosion is a major issue in several countries, especially in developing countries where it becomes a huge challenge in terms of managing erosion. And it affects the communities, affect people who are into, or they affect the sources of livelihood of people within these communities, especially those into small-scale fishing. You realize that a lot of these fishers land their catch on natural landing sites. So once you have erosion, then it becomes difficult to land your catch. And once you can't land your catch, then you can think about the consequences in terms of increasing poverty. So eroding coastlines are a major threat to ensuring food security. And again, as the coastal areas are eroding, you are also thinking about their impact on coastal tourism. So once you have eroding coastline, then coastal tourism also becomes affected. And communities where people work within these hospitality industries also get affected. So managing erosion should be looked at a holistic approach and looking at all the issues, because you can't talk about the economics of the coastal area without looking at the health of the coastal system. So I see coastal erosion as a major threat in enhancing food security moving into the future. And I think it should come into the equation when we are discussing issues of coastal economy.
100%. Thank you very much for that. Perhaps, Sadie, you can come in here, looking at the policy dynamics and, of course, how the ocean economy has been operationalized. Tell us about the challenges in your organization that small-scale farmers have experienced, and how can they better be integrated into the ocean economy?
Thank you. I think it's a good question of inclusivity, especially when, in overall fishing industry, globally, regionally, between either its islands or Africa region or developing states, small-scale fisheries operations have been, overlooked and continues to be overlooked in terms of businesses, right? So, as you know, islands and small island developing states, we are actually shifting the discussion away from ocean economy to what we are moving in negotiation calling blue economy, where we really emphasize inclusivity, social inclusion that has to come in with this concept, right? At the same time, environmental sustainability to meet the economic demands. Now, when it comes to small players, they probably would not fit in the, policy structures that has been there, and also the policy structures that have been there for, pelagic fishery or large-scale fishery. So new opportunities arises under Ministry of Industries or small medium enterprises. That this is where fishing commercial fishermen can be now more leaning towards sort of moving into business angles rather than, under the fisheries divisions where the policies have never been really supportive to them. So these are some new business angles to look at. And I think one of the other things that earlier has come on is, women involvement and women empowerment through financial sustainability. Because if we're looking at food security from a bigger picture of sort of bringing human security, economic security, then it has to finally be in a business portfolios that is providing for all.
Sure. Thank you very much. Dr. Snow, maybe you can come in here around, you spoke about a lot of dynamics. One of the important ones being the ecological system around, aquaculture. Tell me more about that.
Thank you for the question. And I think this also links to what already has been said from a policy perspective, but in particular what Prof. Addo has mentioned. So, having aquaculture or mariculture, just as you will have farming on land or, adjacent to the coast, one needs to do very careful planning. So aquaculture is within an environmental system, within an ecosystem, and has impacts on an ecosystem. So it may not only be producing food, but also if the ecosystem can't deliver the services required for a healthy aquaculture or mariculture, for example, we're pumping sewage into the ocean, or we're have pollutants running in, or we are continuing with microplastics that are entering into, the shellfish or the fish that we're catching, you're impacting on the health of the product and the quality of the product. So you can have a brilliant business case, but if your product is not saleable because it's contaminated, it's polluted, it's undersized, it doesn't look right because of some of the chemicals that impact on how fish grow and look, interfere with the genetics, and we don't even know half or even more than half of what the actual impact of microplastics is going to have on human health. So we may be producing food, but we're not producing quality or healthy food. And we really need to understand that we can't just tackle growing businesses for the sake of growing, because this also links to what Shamira said. If there's no fish, there is no business. There's no industry. If there is a mariculture venture and that's not working, you won't even be making money. You won't be able to enter into the market, because there's also quality checks and quality controls to enter into the market. So, and mariculture isn't an answer for small scale, subsistence type food. It is going into a business venture. It takes a lot of capital, infrastructure, money, capacity, training to run a successful mariculture venture.
100%. Rocky, maybe you can just add there, particularly around, you opened up with speaking about how we need to really pay attention to the environmental challenges that affect the ocean economy. What are the suitable strategies that we can apply to ensure that, the environment is healthy? Because now food is becoming a danger to our health. Food is becoming the founding, tool or father of diseases, So maybe you can just add more to what Dr. Snow has alluded to.
Sure. So I think that for the kinds of communities that we're talking about, and the area of the ocean that they're attached to, I think, the fundamental principle should be that those closest to the resource and the most dependent on them really have to have agency over how they're protected and managed, right? So we think that in the past, small-scale fisheries and coastal fisheries have been not well managed, partly because of just top-down interventions and strategies that really don't take into account the communities that are living there. Very scattered, they're very disaggregated. And so we think that the best solutions are really the ones that are community-led and area-based in that sense, right? So in our case, for Fish Forever, we really work with communities to establish a combination of protected areas, or areas where there are no-take zones, but at the same time, managed or sustainable use areas around those no-take zones, where the fishers understand that the protecting and managing habitats and helping fish populations recover will actually benefit them, because they're the ones that are actually going to get to fish in the areas as they recover, right? So to us, that's something that we need to be helping more communities establish and do in partnership with local governments, national governments, but there really has to be co-management and devolution of authority to these communities. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. I think a lot of other strategies have been tried in the past, and they really just don't stick.
Thank you very much. Ms. Daniels, what are the challenges that you have been exposed to, or the limitation to access the market, particularly with some of the entrepreneurs, the women that you're working with? Just take me through that a bit.
So it depends on what sector you're in, right? So for us, for instance, in the small pelagic sector, you have the barrier to entry is quite high. Your vessels are medium ranged in terms of pricing. So to own your own vessel, you're looking, a brand new vessel is about 40 million rand. I don't know, do I need to translate that into dollars? I wouldn't know what that is right now. And then you're bigger, to put up a processing facility for a fish meal plant, you're looking at 300 to 500 billion rand, right? Million rand, sorry. So it's a $500 million that you need. So the access to the value chain, as we call it the value chain, is vitally important for everybody. But it is also to identify. So we in South Africa, we also have a small scale fishery, and it's all different. The small scale sector has access to different sectors. So for us specifically in small pelagics, we don't have direct dealings with small scale, but our infrastructures are in the communities, and our factories employ people from the community. So in that way, we are linked, we are the community. You might be a commercial industry. People keep referencing community and people think it's only those individual fishermen. But as businesses in the community that provide jobs, that provide secondary and, the trickle-down effect, you are part of the community. Because if the community is not healthy in the sense that people are unhappy or there isn't enough food going through the community, it does impact your business as well. So from the small pelagic industry, there has been a shift from the bigger industry players. So, and that's the other thing. So in our industry, you have your SMME players like me. So an easier place to enter is to be a vessel owner. So that's what I own my own vessels, and then I deliver my fish to a factory that then processes the fish, and then the marketing from there. So for me, the next step on would be to get access to either shareholding in a factory, and then by virtue of that, getting access to the markets. We've just come out of renewal of fishing quotas. So for the last few years, there's been a lot of uncertainty and upheaval in our industry because we weren't sure who was going to end up with what. So there was very little planning that could happen. So I think if we have a similar engagement in 3 years' time, I'll be having a different conversation with you because we would have been able to enter into those discussions because now we know what we have. I think on another, so I wear many hats. So the hat that I'm here today is for Vice Chair of SAPFIA, but I'm also independent chair of the West Coast Rock Lobster Association. So I don't have any fishing quotas, that I'm an independent chair. And in that sector, you do have your small scale communities, your individual fishermen, and you have companies that are operating in the space. And then we're having to deal with illegal fishing, which is leading to the decline of the sector. So it's the conversation is to bring everybody in the legal sector. So your small scale, we call them nearshore, is your individual fishermen, and your offshore, which is your commercial fishermen, come together with a common goal, instead of wasting time almost in an adversarial relationship, which it's almost encouraged sometimes, I find. Whereas if you put everybody around the table, the name of the game is to grow the resource so that the pie is bigger so that everybody benefits from it. So that's why I'm saying the scenario is so different from sector to sector. So it's a very difficult answer to give you. Sorry if I'm all over the show. It's just if you get me started, I can sit and talk to you for hours about this. But it's just, for me, it's just when you try and approach things with a one-size-fits-all mentality, you're already losing. you need to go, and even from community to community, the solutions are different. The way you engage is different. And the quicker the policymakers get that, I think the quicker we'll get to where we need to be.
100%.
I don't know if that answers what you asked.
That's 100%. All good. Thank you. Professor Ado, maybe you can come in here. We've given light to the, environmental challenges of the ocean. Now let's speak about the ocean economy. And you put a lovely term to it, the coastal economy. How can we rebuild a resilient, sustainable coastal economy? So how can we secure economic activity around the coast, particularly as an African continent?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think a resilient coastal economy can be built if we have a resilient coastal systems. Because the coastal systems that would ensure that activities within the coastal environment thrives. And having a resilient coastal systems means that you need a healthy coast. And to me, having a resilient coastal systems means that you also need a resilient coastline. So moving into the future, how do we ensure that our coastline is resilient to all the pressures and all the forces that are, coming to play within the coastal environment? And to me, that is key, because do we ensure that the level of development go hand in hand with the level of ensuring a sustainable, resilient coastline? That is what I look at, because you can have all the activities going on, but if our coastline is not resilient, we cannot have a sustainable coastal economy or ocean economy. Why am I saying that? You realize that a lot of infrastructure development are going on. And these infrastructure development, we now need to understand how they are impacting the coastal systems, how they are impacting the shoreline. Because once these infrastructure, that will result in a boom in economic activities are going on, they are having effect on the environment. And like my colleague said, we need a healthy environment, a healthy coastal environment to be able to achieve what we desire to have so far as coastal economy is concerned. So to me, coastal economy can be achieved, or the optimum with regards to coastal economy can be achieved if we have a resilient coastal system. If we don't have a resilient coastal system, it will be very difficult to have a sustainable coastal economy. That's where I'm coming from. We need to be mindful of the development within the coastal environment. A situation, especially in Africa, a situation whereby we do things anyhow, must stop. The business as usual approach in relating to the coastal environment must stop. We should have a clear-cut plan. And this clear-cut plan must bring on board all the relevant issues. And once we have that, then we can be sure that moving into the future, we can have a sustainable ocean economy.
100%. Zaidi, maybe you can come in here, just as extended from Professor Ado. If we can paint a picture, how does this coastal system look like on a practical term? How does it look like?
Okay, just, if you look at from coastal engineering or physical perspective, we're looking at mangrove systems, we're looking at seagrass systems, we're looking at, coral reef systems, we're looking at, in-water flow and align mixing with fresh, seawater. So all kind of, environmental ecosystems that are sort of going under the water. So, another thing is, like, as I'm a dive professional, many times people just, are not connected to the underwater life the way some other people may be, and they're not able to relate to those systems. So one is that. But if you look at from the social perspective of coastal systems, you will have, small scale communities in one area to a heavy development and coastal hotel in opposite to each other. So these are people systems, or development systems. At the same time, road or traffic, let's say, ferries are moving between two different coastlines, maritime. So all of those, there are different things going on when we talk about systems. And again, coming from an environmental perspective, needing to bring a social perspective, and also like economic lines, where are the blue economic lines? Okay, fish is getting, as my colleague highlighted earlier from Safia, like a value chain. That is the economic line. That is also an economic system that is moving the good from under the water to the table. So all of that to me is a system that we are needing to really look at in a very integrated manner, so something that is a very mixed up a recipe of a food item that you could think of, right? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Snow, perhaps you can come in here in informing us about how do we develop sustainable low carbon food systems using, maritime, using the ocean economy?
That's actually a really difficult question to answer.
I'm sorry. I don't even have the answer myself.
And I cannot give you the answer because it is really that complex. And as Zadie has said, it's a system within a system within a system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And often when we talk about oceans, blue, coastal, as soon as we tag economy on, we focus on the economic system. We also focus on things like the SDGs that are related with human health and well-being. We talk about things like gender and equality. We bring in poverty alleviation, and then we focus our conversations around that, often forgetting interconnected social systems, so context-based. As already our colleagues have said, you can go from one part of the African coast to another part who have a completely different connection with the ocean environment, have different social systems, have different value chains, and also different legal customary laws, as well as other, in-country laws that differ and often compete with one another.
Yeah.
So I would say sustainability can only be achieved if it's inclusive. In other words, it's bottom-up co-development of different sectors working together, not being pitted against one another in terms of saying it's going to create millions and millions of jobs. An important word that Rocky used was also agency. If we take away the agency, and this has to filter up into policy, and the policies then need to bring these particular focuses and lenses together. So we can't just as a government top down say we are going to create X million jobs. We're going to create so many things in the blue economy that the ocean is an untapped bottomless resource. Where that's business as usual, just growing. And so I think, if we listen to what everyone has said here in the room today, it needs inclusivity. We need to understand it's a complex system within a system. And we also need to, if we're going to build sustainability, which what this summit is all about, sustainability is reliant on the environment and a healthy, functional social system. Put those two together, the economy will follow. It's not central. Without people, there is no economy. So, we need to understand that. And there's no people if there's no environment. So we need to bring these systems together, not see it as this quick fix, quick win, let's solve all of these problems, because we're creating more problems. We're increasing the divide, we're increasing inequality, we are increasingly marginalizing people who depend and are connected to our ocean spaces from coast to deep water. We need to understand what we do on land has huge impact on what happens in the coastline. So land-based pollution, land management, agriculture on land is just, those food systems are connected to coastal ocean food systems. And, and both ways, if we're producing fish meal, what are we producing fish meal for? Agriculture, to feed animals on land-based. And so massive, intensive farming can no longer continue because we have climate change on our doorstep. And if we don't start realizing that small food systems are possibly the way to go, and tie in with sustainable, regulated and implemented policies in our bigger, larger food systems, then we're never going to attain that sustainability. So unfortunately, I don't have the roadmap. I don't have the answer, but we just can't continue the way we are, and we can't just keep on touting blue economy as the savior of all.
And Dr. Snow, that is the answer, actually. Perhaps we can add Rocky here just to extend on the question. Rocky, your inputs?
Yeah, no, I was going to say that I think Dr. Snow kind of like painted the whole system and the whole picture really well. I totally agree that a lot of this really has to do with the social systems and the people behind it. And I think the other point that maybe is really helpful for policymakers to really focus on is that for whom is this development, and for whom is this development of the ocean economy for?
Sure.
Right? So it's not just about generating more food to make it to the supermarkets, but it's really food first for the ones that are already depending on the resource, because that's really their main source of food and livelihood. So I think making sure that the policy structures are set up so that the people closest to the resource are able to make those decisions that can really impact both how the environment is being either managed or protected or secured against and having a say in the decisions that are being made about these areas, and then at the same time giving them the ability to secure more benefits from the work that they're doing, either through retaining their wealth, being able to access better markets, but that ultimately they are the ones that will benefit from this resource.
100%. Thank you so much for that. Let's go to you, Shamira. Perhaps you can just give us practical solutions to ensure that we have, or maybe let me put it as, what are the nature-based solutions that we can have to adapt to sea level rise, eutrophication? It just shows I'm not a specialist of the ocean. We had to learn these terms, but just, better maintenance to ensure this food security. What are the nature-based solutions that we can apply?
Can I ask, what do you mean by nature-based solutions?
So things that are natural, because, you've got access to entrepreneurs or small scale.
So I can only comment on the South African fishing industry, and
that's fine.
There's a lot that people can say our government does wrong, right? But in fishing, it's very well managed. If anything, it's a global kind of accepted fact that our fisheries are well managed. If anything, our government or the department that manages fisheries is sometimes too conservative. And I think maybe this is the juncture to say, industrialized fishing or commercial fishing is always an easy scapegoat. But the reality for us is, if I invest in a 40 million rand vessel, I'm not going to go out and plunder the ocean, because then there's going to be no fish in 2 years and I'm going to be sitting with debt that I can't pay. The name of the game for me is sustainability. It is to stick to the total allowable catches, which is you're talking about the natural. How do we bring that in? The sticking to the total allowable catches and not overdoing it, and encouraging entrepreneurs. And there's a lot of CSI programs around. I saw we're busy now engaging with a company that's looking at biodegradable fishing nets. So it is something, and it's in our best interest. We don't want the ocean poisoned. because that's our business. If you can't eat the fish we catch, we don't have a business. So there's a big push for that, you know. How do we make our vessels more efficient is linked to global warming. I mean, if you look at the spike of the diesel price in the last while, it's potentially crippling to us. So we need to look at ways of using less diesel. You know, it's not even something that needs to be forced on us. It's business decisions that we have to make us stay competitive globally and to stay in business. I don't know if that answers your question. But I mean, there is ongoing initiatives from our side. We work closely with the environmental groups because we all play in the same space. You know, the name of the game is to keep the ocean as resilient and as healthy as possible, because then we all win.
Awesome. Rocky, maybe you can come in here, then I'll have Zaidi and Professor Ado, and then I will ask you to do your closing remarks. Rocky?
Sure. I just wanted to add a little bit on your question around the nature-based solutions. I think there are some kind of like very basic things that are overlooked, right? You know, so one is really the protection of habitats and helping, giving them the chance to recover. And protected areas have kind of like acquired a bit of a negative effect because people think of it as just off limits and really just for conservation. But if you do it properly and you're really thinking about optimizing them for better fisheries recovery, you could protect, but at the same time make sure that they're actually generating benefits for people. At the same time, very specific things around behaviors that the community or that fishers can do can also help. Things like leaving the herbivores alone, for example, so that they keep coral reefs healthy. Those are things that if you're able to help people understand why that's important and why they should maybe stay away from certain types of fish, but that will actually help the whole ecosystem recover in the future. So I think there's these kinds of strategies that if they're integrated into the fisheries management interventions that Shamir was describing, I think can really make for a more resilient ecosystem.
Thank you, Zaidi. Thank you, Rocky. Sorry. Zaidi, can you expand on that? I feel like I'm in a movie. You know, you have all unique names. There's Snow, there's Rocky, there's Zaidi. You know, it's such a beautiful combination. Anyway, Zaidi, would you like to extend on that?
Yeah, I think two things that I want to kind of pinpoint. One is that I'm hearing a lot in the panel, you know, policymakers had to be doing that, or a lot is about top-down approaches. Now, some of the role that I'm currently leading, and that is as an ambassador, I get to engage with policymakers, leaders at the same time with industry, from fishermen to all sorts of marine operations. And I really, we have our, this is Daniel who spoke about what actually it entails, what is the workforce challenges. And some of these bigger questions that policymakers actually really need sort of to prep them what is needed. And SDGs today has created that space in the government. SDG 14 in particular has created a space in the policy regime to kind of discuss about interlinked policy processes. However, we are looking at that if there's local organizations and local institutions, if they can partner together to provide fact sheets and policy briefing to policymakers, then there are more likely chances to come together and discuss on the common circle. The next thing I think I wanted to highlight, somebody questioned about blue carbon. These terminologies are arising new, it has been there, but it's coming more and more discussed in terms of blue carbon budgets, blue carbon, credits. One has to know that this blue carbon discussion is arising from the UNFCCC discussions, right? So it is coming from a very different convention, at the global level. And it is a discussion that is heavily still within the scientific realm, especially ocean acidification and blue carbon research. But we're looking at basically more mangroves, salt marshes, sea grass meadows that can be protected in the systems where fixed carbon can be found. So that was something that I just wanted to add. But back to something that I really like about the forum today is that it's we are aware, policymakers are very well aware of the problems. They're looking for solutions. And our young professionals, our institutions can hold them accountable via the Sustainable Development Goals. The business can hold policymakers accountable via the Sustainable Development Goals because it is also for them. So it is a policy framework that for the first time, it is for across many stakeholders that could be using this. So to me, I'm very positive about that, policy making could be more creative and innovative in moving ahead to 2030.
Thank you very much. Perhaps Professor Ado and Dr. Snow, you can come in here. And this is posed to the both of you. Ado, you can go first. Ocean economy, is there a huge opportunity for us to use waste and technology to clarify some of these challenges that we have in the ocean economy and some of the environmental challenges that we have posed?
Yeah, I think I will come in, and but let me contribute a bit to the nature-based solution from the point of coastal protection. I see nature-based solution as the future way of managing the coastal systems. Our method of managing coastal changes in terms of dynamics within the nearshore has always been fighting the natural dynamics. But I think it's about time we begin to think about working with nature so that we allow nature to naturally evolve. And that, to me, is the way forward. We can't continue to fight the natural dynamic and win this fight. It is not possible. Because once you tackle a challenge at a point, what you are doing is that you are basically transferring that challenge or problem to another location. And do we have the strength to fight the entire shoreline or the coastline? It is not possible. So the nature-based solution is the way forward. If you take mangrove restoration, for instance, we can look at, coastal protection areas. We can look at, depending on how we call it, but mangrove restoration has the potential to also fight naturally erosion. So you don't need to put in artificial structures if you have your mangroves, because the mangroves will fight the erosion, which will also reduce the impact of storm activities and reduce the impact of flooding. So you realize that nature-based solution is the way to go. Where we cannot, we can think about hybrid. Now, what are the issues, like the question you raised? Ocean economy, and then, I think I'm trying to recollect your question.
Is there an opportunity for an interface between the ocean economy, technology, and also the green economy? Green, we speak about recycling, we speak about different forms of energy, even waste. We can convert the waste in the ocean into money as well, right? So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree with you. There are lots and lots of opportunities and research. Currently, we are doing a research on looking at how, sargassum is becoming a major problem now in some part of the world. In West Africa, sargassum is becoming a major problem. And we are even seeing it as an emerging risk. But because it's affecting the small-scale fishing industry and affecting the tourism industry, because once the sargassum beaches, the stench that comes out, has an impact on tourism. But we are looking at how can we develop economic opportunities from sargassum, which we consider as a waste. And you realize that if you look at what we are calling waste, if we can give new life to waste, the waste can become a product. And can we use sargassum as, fertilizer for food production? Can we use sargassum as feed or fish feed? Can we use sargassum in construction? Some are researching into the possibility of adding sargassum to construction materials to strengthen them. So you see that there is nothing called waste when it comes to the coastal environment. What we consider waste, we can give it a new life. So I think there are a lot of opportunities within the coastal environment, and these are in terms of what we call waste. And these opportunities, we can turn them around and better the lot of people who live within the coastal environment, particularly the poor within the communities. These waste can be turned around and made good for them, and they can generate some income from these waste. Again, technology is the way to go. We need to have enhanced technology within the coastal system so that we can reduce the challenges that we are encountering within the coastal community. So I don't think we have waste in the coastal communities, no, but we haven't identified the use to what we call waste. They are new materials or new resources that we can bring life into them, and they can be used for other things and really better the lot of the poor within the local communities in our coastal regions. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Snow?
We've jumped around from so many topics, from blue carbon to fisheries,
It's a huge economy. What can we say?
to food security, to livelihoods. So I'm not too sure where to touch on. So I think in response to your question, yes, we have to look at circular closed economies. In other words, stop producing waste. So anthropogenic waste. Then, yes, we do need to look at turning around some of these consequences and impacts because of climate change. There's a reason that sargassum is becoming more prevalent and changing the system. We also need to understand that that's possibly changing the food system as well. The fisheries, the food availability, the whole ecosystem is being changed. And we may have to look for alternative sources of protein and alternative aspects. So we need to understand, what is this impact? We can say there's more seaweed, it's got this problem, we need to do this, we can solve it by including it in that. But it means there is also knock-on effects in the whole food system, in the whole ecosystem, with the fact that we are now having more seaweed. And as humans, we are very innovative and entrepreneurial, but I think we also need to look a little bit carefully at how sustainable some of our entrepreneurial and economic initiatives are, how equitable they are. In other words, who has agency and access to these new initiatives and innovation. As Prof. Addo said, who's going to benefit? Who's going to is it going to put food on the table, and where's the food going to come from? So, and then you look at the blue carbon habitats, and protection is not the only thing. Ecosystem restoration was mentioned as a possibility, and mangroves are also nursery grounds for some of the fishes that are necessary for the fish stocks. So I think, again, it takes us right back to, this is a very complex and complicated system, and we need to understand the interconnectivity to the system. We also need to understand the system has changed because of climate change and because of human impact. There is illegal fishing, there is overfishing. Not everybody is environmentally conscious. Not everyone keeps to within the rules around the world. We also need to understand that we work in Africa in regions, so they're connected between different countries. So we can't just have overfishing in one and think it's not impacting on their neighbors, and illegal fishing in your neighbor's waters. You're impacting on the whole regional structure. So I think we need to collectively, as a continent, start thinking how we can manage our systems and our fisheries, our nursery grounds, our industrial economies, and how we can then contextualize, so bring the voice of context, the local economy, the local people from there into these conversations, so that they are not forgotten and that they are benefiting from these decisions that are being made.
Thank you very much. Let's start with our closing remarks. Ms. Daniels, we'll start with you. Then we'll have Rocky, Zaidi, Dr. Snow. If you still want to add more, you're more than welcome, and Professor Ado as well.
Yeah, just to echo, I can't remember who said it, but the people around the table, it's a very diverse group, and I'd like to take this conversation forward. Post this. I think there's so much value we can get together as a collective, because I think sometimes we all operate in our silos, and day to day, the stresses of just getting through the day, you forget that there's people outside your silo that can positively impact what you're doing. And the more, we use this buzzword of co-management, but we co-manage in our silos, and we don't co-manage broader, and it's pulling everybody together and finding some middle ground. Because besides being in the fishing industry, I remember as a child, those were my favorite things to watch, the nature programs linked to the ocean. So yes, the ocean is my business, but I think we have a responsibility for the future generations. Besides the food security, it's clean oceans, it's being able to see whales and dolphins, and for us in South Africa, snook and all these endangered species. I mean, we're sitting with the industry of West Coast rock lobster, on the brink, and we're fighting for it because it's such a thing that's linked to our culture and our communities, and you don't want that to die out. And it's so interlinked. It's so in my heart and my soul linked to the survival of the ocean. And we need to start putting our egos aside and saying, how do we come together to make a bigger difference and move outside of our silos? I think that would be my last remark. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Shamira. Rocky?
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar. I think we've gotten to the point where, things have become so dire and urgent that we really can't do things the way we used to. And it means also not working the way we used to, and, competing with each other and kind of like disagreeing with other people's approaches, because we're just going to end up arguing. But I think we really have to kind of like put everything out there, not care too much about credit and that's what, and really just find the best of what's working everywhere, and really kind of like put more energy and I guess cooperation towards those kinds of answers, because we have no choice at this point.
Thank you very much, Rocky. Thank you for that. Zaidi?
Yes, so my closing remarks. I think one of the things that I would like to focus, which is very close to my heart when I go out at the ocean, fishing is one of the dangerous occupations, whether it's small scale, whether it's now with the impacts of climate change on the fish's job and the workforce. So as an ambassador, I move around to discuss the workforce, making the workforce safe. Safety at sea is fundamental and foremost, and investments are going less and less in these areas. Innovations are out there, but it's not getting to developing states. Now, when we talk to development agencies, especially within the UN blocks or within International Aid Corporation, unfortunately, support for international labor organizations' decent work agenda for small-scale fishers is not there, or the support is not coming the way we need to. So a collective action to support the workforce is heavily needed from all angles of international cooperation. And therefore, I think highlighting and bringing industry players, professors, practitioners, NGOs together to really say, okay, do we agree? Okay, this is, statistics are saying this is the workforce is in such a critical condition. Investments could be placed in there to support that. Again, a lot of it is contextual, but from a global picture, This has been my research over the last 3 years, and I heavily work as a marine operations safety sea officer. I think it's something that I personally would like to contribute, and I'm contributing, and I look forward to my listeners. If they would like to know further in this area of research, feel free to connect with me. But thank you. Such a pleasure to be discussing things that we really love, but you also love to have seafood on your plate. So we are trying to do our share here.
100%. Thank you, Zaidi. You know, the way we've been speaking about policies and strategies and interventions, we forget that some of us love sushi and we want those prawns and the sushis and all of that on our plate. So they've got to be healthy. So thank you very much for reminding us that it's the simple things that count. Thank you. Let's have Professor Addo, your parting words, and Dr. Snow. Professor Addo, you can go ahead.
Right. Thank you very much. And let me say that the business as usual approach to the ocean and the coastal environment needs to change. We must embrace inclusiveness. I mean, there should be inclusive approach, and then that is the way we should go. Probably my last word is that we need to appreciate that resilient coastal systems, I want to reiterate on this, resilient coastal systems are key to the realization of a sustainable ocean economy. If we don't have a resilient coastal systems, we cannot achieve a sustainable ocean economy. Let me thank you very much for the invitation. I've enjoyed the discussion and I'm very grateful.
Thank you very much, Professor Addo. We truly are too. Dr. Snow, parting words?
Parting words, I'll be very quick. I see we're getting to the end of our session. I have to echo what Prof. Addo has said. You know, we need to build resilience and resilience within the system. And also, I want to, again, echo that I think it's excellent we're having conversations, and it's excellent that the conversations are growing. In other words, this is the first time I'm sitting in a room with these people, and I've sat on many panels in the last couple of months. And I think it's good to broaden our connections and to be able to work together, because there's future opportunities to not only work together, but one thing I want to call is I don't only want to be on panels. Let's be part of the solution. We need action, because this business as usual, as Prof. Addo said, it's going to continue if we just keep on talking and not actioning sustainability.
100%. Thank you so much. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes our panel discussion on the ocean economy. Action-based, action-based, action-based. And hopefully next year when we have summits such as these, we've made progress to those actions. So let me thank you very much for your time, and thank you for the contribution that you're making towards Africa and the globe in your research and in your respective industries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.